I am not a Protestant, so I'm a convert to the Catholic Church. Me going back to being a Protestant again would be extremely easy. It's a world I'm quite comfortable in. I have a lot of friends and people who I know who are Protestant. I've been invited to many Protestant churches. I always decline. But why not just go Protestant, especially considering how woke Pope Francis is? Well, there's a number of reasons why I simply don't go Protestant. One, Pope Francis, being a crazy lukewarm modernist and a crazy heretic, does not mean Protestantism is correct. Even if you want to argue that Pope Francis' behavior disproves Catholicism, by the way, it doesn't. More on that in a bit. Keep watching. It still doesn't change the fact that there are a number of problems that are problems with Protestantism biblically. For example, belief in salvation by faith alone, James 2:24, that explicitly contradicts the Bible. We are not saved by faith alone. And it would be false and wrong for me to go to a church that explicitly is contradicting the teaching of the Bible. My whole reason for not going with Pope Francis is because he's going against the Bible. Why would I just go to another church that is just a little bit less woke about not following the Bible? I'm going to follow the Bible and what it says to do. Secondly, they are also wrong, by and large, about transubstantiation. Transubstantiation is taught in the Bible. In John 6, verses 3 to 4, John 6, verses 35 through to 69, Jesus clearly teaches transubstantiation. He reiterates the literal imagery 3 times. The verse that Protestant says, Jesus is saying, it's just symbolic. Yeah, Jesus just said the flesh profits nothing, and he's saying that in reference not to his flesh, because Jesus gives his flesh for the life of the world, and if this flesh profits us nothing, we are in huge trouble. And would literally overthrow the gospel and be totally inconsistent with what Jesus was saying about eating his flesh and drinking his blood. It would be crazy by crazy people's standards. Jesus is saying, rather, that they are a bunch of carnal worldlings who are concerned with material concerns and looking good. And they won't accept his teaching about eating his flesh and drinking his blood because it is gross, essentially. And Jesus is willing to turn away people. He's willing to lose followers over this. That shows this is not an optional extra. What does that say about going Baptist or Pentecostal? And I was even chatting with, recently I was at a lunch at a Divinity College in my town. I know the people there. And I was chatting with someone who was arguing, I believe that the Eucharist is literal too. So, okay, do you worship the Eucharist as God? No. Well, it's Jesus' flesh and blood. Well, it's just like a symbol. Like, okay, you just said you thought it was literal. Now you're saying it's a symbol again. There's a lot of Lutherans and High Church Anglicans who like doing a lot of double talk about the Blessed Sacrament. They will not they'll say, we don't worship the Eucharist because it's there to be eaten. Jesus Christ came to be served, not to served. Jesus Christ came to serve, not to be served. But that is not a reason why I'm not going to sing hymns. But that's not grounds for not worshiping him. And that's not an argument for practical Arianism. Protestants deny in practice the reality of that the Eucharist is Jesus' flesh and blood, literally. This is commanded in the Gospel as a salvation issue. Ergo, anyone who denies it is teaching a false gospel. It's entirely true that Francis might be teaching a false gospel too, and I agree that he is. Like Pachamama worship, gaslighting about fiducia supplicans, blessing of same-sex relationships. Like, that's crazy. That's heresy. Full stop. So Protestantism is not just as a whole, it's just another false gospel. What's more, you also got a lot of Protestant churches and denominations that are dealing with the same problem that the Catholic Church is dealing with modernism. Just as there are modernist and conservative and traditional Catholics, there are modernist, traditional, and conservative Protestants. My gosh, I've seen some of them, and a lot of them are even crazier and nuttier than Pope Francis. So acting like Protestantism is just a place to go to that's easy to get away from the modernists is simply a lie. They just do a better job at faking it. But also, as to why not go to like Eastern Orthodox or something else, is because the papacy is something that was established in the Bible and the early church fathers. Matthew 16:18-19, you are Peter, and upon this rock I build my church, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. He will give the keys of the kingdom of heaven. We know from the writings of St. Ignatius, of St. Irenaeus of Lyons, that the Bishop of Rome was seen as successor of St. Peter, had a primacy of authority, preeminent authority, was terminology used, over the other churches. As a matter of principle, as a matter of ideal, as a matter of the divine constitution of the church, under divine law taught by both scripture and oral tradition, the Bishop of Rome has jurisdiction over the other churches. Maybe Pope Francis is doing a civicant. Maybe there's a civicant situation. Maybe SSPX is right, need to recognize and resist. But let me put it like this to anyone who's, especially if anyone's watching this and is American. It's one thing to think that the president in the United States is corrupt and needs to be impeached. You need to resist him, even though he is technically in charge of the whole government of the country, and thwarting his designs if he's going to ruin the whole country. It's not one thing to say that. It's also another thing to say, no, the current president is illegally holding the office. It is not the real president. It is nothing entirely outright to say that the office of President of the United States was never intended by the founders and framers of the American Constitution as an office and should not exist, and it should be ignored. That is something else entirely. Or that you should have a United States that does not have a president. Those are entirely different things. Those are all entirely different things. The office of the papacy is being horrifically abused at this time. And we have precedent for resisting it when it gets crazy. St. Maximus Confessor was declared a saint because he resisted Pope Honorius I in his corruption. We have literal precedent for this in church history, and St. Maximus Confessor absolutely recognized the papacy. Even the person of Pope Honorius as a legitimate pope having jurisdiction over the whole church. Look at the transcripts of his trial. Christ established the papacy. That is what the church fathers taught. I am going to go to an authentic, conservative, traditionalist Catholic church. That is why I'm SSPX and Civicontist. And that's why I go that route, even though it is a long distance for me to go to Mass. Many days I don't get to go to church on Sunday. That's why I still don't go to Protestant churches, because even though they're closer, they are still teaching a false gospel. They are still teaching a gospel that does not save, and I'm not going to give countenance to that. Just because Francis is woke and a modernist heretic, just because doesn't mean that you are not a modernist heretic or heretic of some sort yourself. God bless. And if you ever get a chance, please go check out an SSPX church near you. God bless.